The AbInitio software is a fourth-generation data analysis, batch processing, data manipulation graphical user interface, GUI-based parallel processing product which is commonly used to extract, transform, and load ETL data. AbInitio Software is an American multinational enterprise software corporation based in Lexington, Massachusetts. The company specializes in high-volume data processing applications and enterprise application integration. It was founded in 1995 by the former CEO of Thinking Machines Corporation, Cheryl Handler, and several other former employees after the bankruptcy of that company. Can you explain AbInitio? AbInitio is a Latin word meaning from the beginning ab initio is a tool used to extract, transform and load data, ETL. It is a bi-platform comprised of 6 data processing products such as Cooperating System, the Component Library, Data Profiler, Conduct, Graphical Development Environment, and Enterprise Meta Environment. It is also used for data analysis, data manipulation, batch processing, and graphical user interface-based parallel processing. What is the architecture of AbInitio ETL? GDE, Graphical Development Environment. Component Library. Cooperating System. Data Profiler. Enterprise Meta Environment, EME. Conduct IT. What is the role of Cooperating System in AbInitio? The AbInitio Cooperating System provide features like manage and run AbInitio graph and control the ETL processes. Provide AbInitio extensions to the operating system. ETL processes monitoring and debugging. Metadata management and interaction with EM. Can you explain AbInitio GDE? GDE, Graphical Development Environment, is a graphical application for developers which are used for designing and running AbInitio graphs. It also provides the ETL process in AbInitio is represented by AbInitio graphs. Graphs are formed by components, from the standard components library or custom, flows, data streams, and parameters. A user-friendly front-end for designing AbInitio ETL graphs. Ability to run, debug AbInitio jobs and trace execution logs. GDE AbInitio graph compilation process results in generation of a Unix shell script which may be executed on a machine without the GDE installed. Can you explain Component Library? The AbInitio Component Library is a reusable software module for sorting, data transformation, and high-speed database loading and unloading. This is a flexible and extensible tool which adapts at runtime to the formats of records entered and allows creation and incorporation of new components obtained from any program that permits integration and reuse of external legacy codes and storage engines. What are the layouts does AbInitio support? Supports serial and parallel layouts. A graph layout supports both serial and parallel layouts at a time. A multi-file system is a 4-way parallel system. A component in a graph system can run 4-way parallel system. What does dependency analysis mean in AbInitio? In AbInitio, dependency analysis is a process through which the IM examines a project entirely and traces how data is transferred and transformed from component to component, field by field, within and between graph. Can you explain IM? Enterprise Meta Environment, EME, it's an environment for storage and also metadata management, both business and technical metadata. The metadata is accessed from the graphical development environment and also the web browser or the cooperating command line. It is AbInitio repository for any placeholders. Can you define Data Profiler? The Data Profiler is an analytical application that can specify data range, scope, distribution, variance, and quality. It runs in a graphic environment on top of the cooperating system. How AbInitio is segregated. AbInitio is logically divided into 2 segments. 1. Data integration portion. 2. User interface, access to the metadata information. How can you connect them to AbInitio server? To connect with AbInitio server, there are several ways like set tab_error_root. Log into web interface server host, server port, web link. Through GDE, you can connect to data store. Through error command. What are the file extensions used in AbInitio? The file extensions used in AbInitio are MP, it stores AbInitio graph or graph component. MPC, custom component or program. MDC, dataset or custom dataset component. DML, data manipulation language file or record type definition. XFR, transform function file. DAT, data file, multifile or serial file. What information does a DBC file extension provides to connect to the database? The DBC extension provides the GDE with the information to connect with the database are 1. Name and version number of the database to which you want to connect. 2. Name of the computer on which the database instance or server to which you want to connect runs, or on which the database remote access software is installed. 3. Name of the server, database instance or provider to which you want to link. How you can run a graph infinitely in AbInitio. To execute graph infinitely, the graphend script should call the ksh file of the graph. Therefore, if the graph name is abc.mp, then in the end script of the graph it should call to abc.ksh. This will run the graph for infinitely. Can you define sandbox? A sandbox is referred for the collection of graphs and related files that are saved in a single directory tree and behaves as a group for the purposes of navigation, version control, and migration. Can you define multifile system? Multifile is a set of directories on different nodes in a cluster. They possess identical directory structure. The multifile system leads to a better performance as it is parallel processing where the data resides on multiple disks. What are the components or functions available in AbInitio? The main components in AbInitio are here below. Dedup, to remove duplicates. Join, to join multiple input dataset based on a common key value. Sort, this component reorders the data. It takes the collation order and dumps data to memory. Filter, any conditional related removal of data. Replicate, this component is mainly for the parallelism as an additional copy of data is useful while any other nodes go unavailable. Merge, his component is to combine multiple input data. How can you run a graph infinitely? To run a graph infinitely, the end script in the graph should call the ksh file of the graph. Thus if the name of the graph is abc.mp, then in the end script of the graph there should be a call to abc.ksh. Like this the graph will run infinite. Can you explain the different types of parallelism used in AbInitio? Component parallelism, a graph with multiple processes executing simultaneously on separate data uses parallelism. Data parallelism, a graph that works with data divided into segments and operates on each segment respectively, uses data parallelism. Pipeline parallelism, a graph that deals with multiple components executing simultaneously on the same data uses pipeline parallelism. Each component in the pipeline reads continuously from the upstream components, processes data and writes to downstream components. Both components can operate in parallel. Can you explain sort component? The sort component in AbInitio reorders the data. It comprises of two parameters, key and max core. Key, it is one of the parameters for sort component which determines the collation order. Max core, this parameter controls how often the sort component dumps data from memory to disk. What is the difference between dedup component and replicate component? Dedup component, it is used to remove duplicate records. Replicate component, it combines the data records from the inputs into one flow and writes a copy of that flow to each of its output ports. Can you Define partition and what are the different types of partition components in AbInitio? In AbInitio, partition is the process of dividing data sets into multiple sets for further processing. Different types of partition component includes partition by round robin, distributing data evenly, in block-sized chunks, across the output partitions. Partition by range, you can divide data evenly among nodes, based on a set of partitioning ranges and key. Partition by percentage, distribution data, so the output is proportional to fractions of 100. Partition by load balance, dynamic load balancing. Partition by expression, data dividing according to a DML expression. Partition by key, data grouping by a key. Can you explain departition in AbInitio? Departition is done in order to read data from multiple flow or operations and are used to rejoin data records from different flows. There are several departition components available, which includes gather, merge, interleave, and concatenation. What are the error commands used in AbInitio? Error command used in AbInitio includes error object is, it is used to see the listings of objects in a directory inside the project. Error object rm, it is used to remove an object from the repository. Error object versions verbose, it gives the version history of the object. Other error command for AbInitio include error object cat, error object modify, error lock show user, etc. Can you explain rollup component? Rollup component enables the users to group the records on certain field values. It is a multiple stage function and consists initialize 2 and rollup 3. What is the difference between rollup and scan? By using rollup we can't generate cumulative summary records, for that we will be using scan. What is the syntax for m_dump in AbInitio? The syntax for m_dump in AbInitio is used to view the data in multifile from Unix prompt. The command for m_dump includes m_dump a.dmla.dat. This command will print the data as it manifested from GDE when we view data in formatted text. m_dump a.dmla.dat. The output is redirected in b.dat and will act as a serial file. b.dat that can be referred when it is required. What is the relation between M, GDE and cooperating system? M is set as enterprise metadata and GDE as graphical development env, and cooperating system can be set as AbInitio server relation BW. This co-op, M, and is as follows. Cooperating system is the AbInitio server. This co-op is installed on particular O.S platform that is called native OS coming to the M. It's just as repository in Informatica, it's hold the metadata, transformations, config file source and targets informations. Coming to its is end-user environment where we can develop the graphs, mapping just like in Informatica. Designer uses the GD and designs the graphs and save to the IM or sandbox. It is at user side, where M is at server side. How can you run a graph infinitely? To run a graph infinitely, the end script in the graph should call the ksh file of the graph. Thus, if the name of the graph is abc.mp, then in the end script of the graph there should be a call to abc.ksh. Like this the graph will run infinitely. How do you add default rules in Transformer? Double-click on the Transform Parameter of Parameter tab page of Component Properties. It will open Transform Editor. In the Transform Editor, click on the Edit menu and then select Add Default Rules from the drop-down. It will show two options. 1. Match names. 2. Wildcard. Can you explain local lookup is? If your lookup file is a multifile and partitioned, sorted on a particular key, then local lookup function can be used ahead of lookup function call. This is local to a particular partition depending on the key. Lookup file consists of data records which can be held in main memory. This makes the transform function to retrieve the records much faster than retrieving from disk. It allows the transform component to process the data records of multiple files fast. What is the difference between lookup file and lookup, with a relevant example? Generally, lookup file represents one or more serial files, flat files. The amount of data is small enough to be held in the memory. This allows transform functions to retrieve records much more quickly than it could retrieve from disk. A lookup is a component of AbInitio graph where we can store data and retrieve it by using a key parameter. A lookup file is the physical file where the data for the lookup is stored. What is lookup? Lookup is basically a specific dataset which is keyed. This can be used to mapping values as per the data present in a particular file, serial, multi-file. The dataset can be static as well dynamic, in case the lookup file is being generated in previous phase and used as lookup file in current phase. Sometimes, hash joins can be replaced by using reformat and lookup if one of the input or the join contains less number of records with slim record length. AbInitio has built-in functions to retrieve values using the key for the lookup. Can you define outer join? An outer join is used when one wants to select all the records from a port, whether it has satisfied the join criteria or not. Can you explain and improve the performance of a graph? There are many ways the performance of the graph can be improved. Use a limited number of components in a particular phase. Use optimum value of max core values for sort and join components. Minimize the number of sort components. Minimize sorted join component and if possible replace them by an in-memory join, hash join. Use only required fields in the sort, reformat, join components. Use phasing, flow buffers in case of merge, sorted joins. If the two inputs are huge then use sorted join, otherwise use hash join with proper driving port. For a large dataset don't use broadcast as partitioner. Minimize the use of regular expression functions like re_index in the transfer functions. Avoid repartitioning of data unnecessarily. Try to run the graph as long as possible in MFS. For these input files should be partitioned and if possible output file should also be partitioned. How do you truncate a table? There are many ways to do it. Probably the easiest way is to use truncate table. Run SQL or update table can be used to do the same thing. Run program. What is the difference between a DB config and a CFG file? .dbc file has the information required for AbInitio to connect to the database to extract or load tables or views. While CFG file is the table configuration file created by db_config while using components like load DB table. Can you explain data mapping? Data mapping deals with the transformation of the extracted data at field level. That is the transformation of the source field to target field is specified by the mapping defined on the target field. The data mapping is specified during the cleansing of the data to be loaded. Can you explain the graph parameter? There are two types of graph parameters in AbInitio. Local parameter. Formal parameters. Those parameters working at runtime. Can you explain the layouts does AbInitio supports? Basically there are serial and parallel layouts supported by AbInitio. A graph can have both at the same time. The parallel one depends on the degree of data parallelism. If the multi-file system is four-way parallel then a component in a graph can run four-way parallel if the layout is defined such as it's same as the degree of parallelism. Can you explain primary keys and foreign keys? In RDBMS the relationship between the two tables is represented as primary key and foreign key relationship. Whereas the primary key table is the parent table and foreign key table is the child table. The criteria for both the tables is there should be a matching column. Can you explain Cartesian joins? It will get you a Cartesian product. A Cartesian join is when you join every row of one table to every row of another table. You can also get one by joining every row of a table to every row of itself. How do you truncate a table? From AbInitio, run SQL component using the DDL truncate table by using the truncate table component in AbInitio. How to run the graph without GDE. In run == deploy a script, it create a bat file at our host directory, and then run bat file from command prompt. How can I run the two GUI merge files? Do you mean by merging GUI map files in WR. If so, by merging GUI map files in GUI map editor it won't create corresponding test script. Without test script you can't run a file. So it is impossible to run a file by merging two GUI map files. Can you explain AbInitio.org? AbInitio.org is the config file for AbInitio. It is found in user's home directory. Generally it is used to contain AbInitio home path, different login information like an encrypted password login method for hosts where the graph connects in time of execution. It may contain inf like host and others. Can you explain local and formal parameter? Two are graph level parameters, but in local you need to initialize the value at the time of declaration, whereas global no need to initialize the data, it will prompt at the time of running the graph for that parameter. Like, share and comment. Don't forget to click the subscribe button. Click the bell button for latest updates.